Good evening, all. Welcome to the Monday, February 28th, 2022, regular meeting of the Town of Easton Planning and Zoning Board. In keeping with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, as amended by Governor Baker on February 12th, 2022, this meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards a quorum. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded on ECAT. If you use Zoom, you can follow the link on the planning board agenda, which is posted in the calendar on the front page of the town's website. While board members, while board members and applicants will be on video and audio, public participants will do the webinar as attendees. They are muted with no video feed from them. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, members of the public can be recognized by using the raise hand function on Zoom, or make a request with the Q&A function. If you are joining only by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. And board members are asked to announce themselves when making a motion in a second, so that it'll be clear to the attendants, to the audience, and minute takers who made the motion. All votes will be by roll call. And to ensure we have a quorum, we will now have a roll call of the board. Gregory Strange here.
Eric Deshane here.
Robert Stetson here.
Sanderson here. Kevin here.
All right, great. Thank you one and all for that. So first up tonight, a continued public hearing for 35-37 Quanticut Ave. Special permit for a duplex. Stephanie, I'll let you take this one.
Okay, so hold on, I need to promote Amy. I don't know where she went. There we go. Okay. Okay, I don't know what's happening.
Am I the only one here?
No, that's Amy, and I'm not sure, she was joining the meeting both by her laptop and phone, and I don't know which is which, and I don't know what's going on. And I did just promote Lydia. Amy, if you could type in the chat what's happening with your connection.
Let's see. She needs to mute the computer if she's using the phone.
Okay, I don't. Okay. Let's try this.
Did you see that note from Amy in the?
Yes, and I'm trying to promote her, but there, it looks like that might have done something.
I think it did.
Okay.
Hello.
Welcome one and all. Okay, so anybody speaking, just please identify yourself, name and address for the record, and floor is yours.
So did Lydia, is Lydia on? Oh, there she is. Hi, Lydia.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon or good evening. Yes, Lydia here. Would you like to, do you have any questions, first of all, to what you have received so far? I know there was a lot of back and forth about the site plan. I received the site plan today. and I can share what I have received, if that's okay. If you have any questions about the floor plans or on the elevations, please by all means, I'm here to answer them.
Oh, can I just interrupt you for a second, Leah? So
Yes.
so there's a new site plan that you're gonna show us that we haven't seen?
No, this site plan was submitted to the board a week ago.
Okay, so it's the one we've had for a while. Okay.
Yes.
So just for expediency, we have a pretty full agenda. I'm just wondering, I think we were pretty much wrapped up, and then unfortunately I was in the hospital, but I know there's a lot of back and forth regarding the easements. I know Steph, want to speak to that, or perhaps Stephanie in the development?
Yes,
just
I mean,
report up to snuff where we're at.
Yes, the question that was raised by the chair was, his observation was that essentially the driveway was being shared with the abutter. They have an easement that allows them access from Paquonicket Avenue to their property. They're landlocked. And the question was, because you were proposing, and presumably prior to the vacation of the duplex as a duplex, or the residence as a duplex, that driveway was being used by the residents of your property on Paquonicket Avenue, as well as by the abutting property, that essentially was a common driveway. And the question was, the vacation of the property, your property as a duplex, did that vacate the use of a common driveway? And I talked to town council about that, and his opinion was that because the abutter continued to use the driveway, even though the residence wasn't occupied, that they're two separate uses. The use as a duplex is one use, and then the common driveway is a second use. So the common driveway use was never vacated by the abutter.
Okay, great. And Stephanie, I just noticed Deb's there. She asked me to just.
Okay, there she, yep.
I wanted to wait till you were done speaking. So, do applicants have anything to add to that, or was that an accurate summary, or when they throw it to the board, see if they have any questions or comments for you?
I don't have anything to add. Amy, do you?
No, I think Stephanie summed up, I think, what happened kind of offline in the last month. And I think that was the action item that we were all focused on for the last few weeks, so.
Great. Anybody on the board have any questions?
No.
Anybody in the general audience that have any questions or comments? If you could raise your hand on Zoom. So, seeing none, so this is a public hearing. So would you, before the board could take a vote on this or entertain a motion for a vote, we need to vote to close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, it means no more information can come in. Once the board votes to do so, and we can only do so at the request of the applicant. So, would you like us to close the public hearing?
Motion to public hearing for Paquonicket Avenue.
Amy, I think you said yes.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't sure if you were
once.
looking up from us or from.
I always appreciate Amas's passion for making a motion. So we all know who had the first. Was there a second in that kerfuffle?
Anderson, I'll second that.
There we go. Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none and seeing none. All those in favor of the motion? Strange, aye.
Sharon, aye.
That's an aye. Anderson, aye.
Sharon, aye.
Great, that's unanimous. Well, thank you, ladies. Good luck with your project, and thank you for helping preserve a building in Easton.
Was that just, did we just close the hearing or did we vote on the
That
actual?
was just a close.
See, this is what pain medicine does to you. No, I'm kidding.
Excuse me, Mr.
I'm not on
Excuse
any
me,
medicine. Yes, who's calling?
This is Suzanne.
Oh, hey, Suzanne.
Rob Stetson should not be voting because he missed 2 meetings, but that
That's right. This was one of the ones. Yep.
Well, you just killed the project. That's too bad.
No.
Thank you,
Motion to
Suzanne.
approve the site plan and special permit, for this duplex dwelling.
Second. Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none and seeing none, all those in favor, Strange eye.
Boucher and I.
Anderson, I.
Very much.
Al Sarah,
Well, I was gonna wax poetic, but now you know what I was gonna say, so I'll just say, good luck, ladies, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
All right, next up, we have a continued public hearing for 20 South Street, Old Forge Commons, special permit for a flexible development.
Okay, so we have Walter Hermano, Bill Humphrey, and Frank Rivlin. They should be joining us shortly. I will tell you, Easton is doing its part to eat up Zoom bandwidth tonight. There's a planning board meeting, there's a conservation commission meeting, and a board of selectmen meeting. All
Yeah, I think it might even be a fourth, right? I remember when I went to the calendar, I was like, wow, it was,
there could be. I stopped at 3.
Oy. Good evening, Walter. You have to unmute yourself. Frank. And what's your?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Walter Hermano.
Evening. Everybody here?
Am I muted, guys, or am I?
No,
No, we can only hope.
Oh, boy. Thank you.
Ex-basketball coach humor there, guys. This is what happens when you live together in town for 40 years. You get to abuse someone. All right, names and addresses for the record, and the floor is yours, gentlemen.
Frank Rivlin, Land Surveyors, 859 Washington Street, Southeastern Mass.
Walter Hermano, 6 Thomas Road, Berkeley, Mass.
William Humphrey, 23 Mullen Lane, Northeastern Mass.
Thank you. And I just want to jump in real quick. So since it's been a while since we were all together. I think, I haven't really been involved in it, but I think the major revision is, I know there's a change to the stormwater management type of system and layout, which will go over, and just any other substantial changes since we were all together last. If you guys want to take us through that, that'd be great.
Yeah, if I may.
You may.
We took the initial comments from the peer review under consideration. We made some minor changes to drainage areas, both existing and post-construction. And we also paid a visit out there to determine additional test pits for observation of a high groundwater table on the higher part of the property. And we have since held a substantially higher elevation for groundwater on the mid to upper part of the portion of the property. And in doing so, we have constructed 2 pocket wetlands. We abandoned the idea of an infiltration basin due to the higher groundwater table determination. The project consists mostly of C and D soils, so infiltration of groundwater is technically not very practical according to the DEP. So we have 2 pocket wetlands that will contain the surface runoff on the property. Before then, we have catch basins in the street. We have 2 water quality swales, 1 before each pocket wetland. And we also have some stormwater flowing through the front of the property through a proprietary separator and then into South Street.
Just want to jump in for a second. Okay, there we go. I was just gonna say, maybe we should be sharing a screen on this, but.
yeah, okay.
Great, thanks.
So I guess the applicant is not ready to do that. I will do that.
If I can just interrupt for a second, the reason this has taken so long is talking with the town engineer. What Walter Hermano had to do is he went in and he engineered and figured out 2 different ways. he figured out doing it being underground drainage and also doing it with, creating the wetland. And by doing, so he's figured this subdivision both ways. Typically, you don't do that twice for a subdivision, but he did it both ways. And the reason he did that is just to show that if we did underground storage for the stormwater, is to figure out what would happen if we did that, and what would happen to the road elevations. And by doing that, he ran all those numbers, and by doing that, it raised the road 1.5 feet. And by doing that, to get rid of the water from the lots to get them to run out to the road, we would have to basically strip all the trees in the subdivision. And that's not our intent. We've been talking about this for quite some time now. So that's why Walter recommended, and we like doing this, and I know the town, working with you guys for all these years, I know this is the way we like to go, is going with creating the pocket wetlands. And by doing this, we don't have to raise the road. We can keep the road at the elevation that we want it to be, so we don't have to go cutting down all the trees, especially having sewage. And that's what, so Walter's done both ways. He's done it conventional with underground storage for stormwater and doing it with the pocket wetland. I just wanted to make that clear that he's done it both ways, so there's no questions here. He's done engineering twice on the subdivision.
So Greg, if I may point out to the board, this is the constructed wetland that is being proposed on the southern portion of the site. And this is the constructed wetland on the northeastern portion of the site that's being proposed. Just gonna hop to the other, just so you can get more context for that northerly wetland. And Walter, if there's anything else you'd like to point out, just let me know and I can show it.
It is on 2 sheets, but we used design points 1, 2, 3, 4, both pre and post development. And we've shown that the amount of water and the peak rate of water at each design point is less than the existing conditions, and substantially less. The 2 constructed wetlands, their job is to hold back a significant amount of water, and it's called a pool elevation. Both were built in conformance with the targets and standards of constructed wetlands, but due to the nature of these 2 structures, the amount of water that will be coming out of them is a very, very low amount of water. We have a 2 and 10-year storm event where essentially there is no water through the outlet control structures. We're talking maybe less than a cubic foot per second. And existing conditions leaving the property are substantially more than that. Also, through the entrance of the property, again, another design point, we have less water leaving in that direction. So we have a case of at least equalization, if not better, where the water that was going in that direction already was being picked up by South Street, and we're going to send less water in the same direction. It'll go into the existing drainage system that's in South Street. So all in all, we've met all the standards of the stormwater management, and we have a development here where we're controlling the amount of water, both peak and total volume, substantially controlling it. And it will have releases through outlet control structures that are slow and in small quantities, slightly over a greater period of time, instead of a deluge or a large rain event just swiping right over the property. It actually will be controlled. We're also going to grab some infiltration or recharge credit through roof dry wells. We have 1 proposed at each building corner, that is, so there's 4 per building. And that more than adequately satisfies the recharge requirement for the sea soils types on this property. The two constructed wetlands, I should add, we have water quality swells before them, and in the beginning of each is a sediment forebay, which is a requirement for constructed wetland. And the water quality swell was added because we have to send the water from the street to these two wetlands anyhow. And that provides for an additional removal of total suspended solids and other pollutants, phosphorus being one of them. The net result is the TSS removal for this project is at least 95% or better. And that's through the constructed wetlands and or the proprietary separator out in the front of the property. The state standard is 80, so 95% or better is very good. I think I've covered all the bases for the standards that we have to hit.
Okay, Walter, can I just interrupt you real quick?
Yeah,
Just while you're talking this, and maybe just for the benefit of the audience members or even some board members, just real quickly, I mean, we all understand catch basins, you know, in a kind of a conventional subsurface system, you know, catch basins or swales catch the water, collect it through pipes, go back to what, detention, retention, however it's set up. Could you just quickly maybe give everybody a run through of actually, when you say constructed wetlands, what it is and how it works, just so they can understand? Because I could see being a homeowner going, wow, they're getting rid of all these pipes. Well, what's this thing that looks like a go-kart track, right?
Yeah. Sure, I can walk you through either one. They're both designed very similar. They're intended to be longer than they are wide. And the water comes in through a head wall at the roadway, both for this one right here on the screen and also for the lower one. This one's pocket wetlands number 1. The water comes through this water quality swales, check dams, that slow it down. So you can have additional treatment and removal of sediments. Then it spills over and it begins a path through what's called the low marsh. That's the lower elevation inside the constructed wetlands. For this one, it's elevation 134, which is at or near the water table, and that's how these are designed. They have to be at or near the water table. Then we have a high marsh, which is a elevation of 135. So you have some soils that are slightly higher. Again, we're trying to produce this channel to slow down and afford some treatment of the water. We also have a micro pool, which is a deep spot at this end. That will accumulate sediment over time. And we have an outlet control structure. And through that structure, the water will leak through a smaller hole and into a pipe, and then eventually discharge to a flared end swale. The water will back up to that opening in that pipe. That's called the normal pool elevation. So you will have some standing water when you have a storm event. The water can also dissipate through evapotranspiration. It can be picked up by the vegetation. I should just take 1 second and give Ken Thompson credit. He has provided the vegetation for each one of these constructed wetlands. And they're species designed to be in a wet environment. I believe he's called out buttonbush and 2 other types of grasses. The name of the grass escapes me at the moment. But we have a berm set on top of each one of these wetlands, which is a foot higher than the highest elevation where the water will escape over the spillway. That's called a freeboard. That's just in case the water is going over the broad-crested weir at such a pace. You have to have a berm in order to contain it. And that would be a very historic amount of water. The water leaving over the berm, this riprap at the outlet end of the constructed wetlands, it's only a matter of several inches over the top of the berm during the worst event. As I said earlier, both of these are designed to retain a great deal of water and weep it out slowly until it reaches a normal pool elevation. But they afford a significant amount of treatment over pollutants compared to other type of structures. You have vegetation. Aesthetically, they're more pleasing. Some people like to see the vegetation as opposed to having structures buried underground that you'll never see them and you'll be hard pressed to maintain them. Speaking of maintenance, we have a 15-foot minimum access way that goes down alongside the swale, and it has to come out all the way up to the broad crested weir, so we can access the control structures and maintain each water quality swale, which over time, there may be some sediments that have to be removed, but that's the job of this water quality swale and the sediment forebay, which is nearest to the road. The catch basins beginning on the project are in the street, as we all know, but they will have hoods and they'll have a sump on the bottom. So they're going to collect a lot of grit, a lot of trash if there is any blowing around, some sands. So they're afforded a solid removal credit as well. But when you put all the components together in this treatment train, they call it the best management practices treatment train, we have a pollutant TSS removal rate of greater than 95%. Any questions?
Can I add to this too, Greg?
Sure, Mr. Humphries, feel free.
All right, so what I like about this type of drainage for a subdivision is also being a private subdivision. I can create, excuse me, I can have this monitored, and there will be monies from the association that will monitor this, and I'll have to go over that with Walter, what he would recommend on this, how often it should be monitored. But there'll be monies put away to take care and maintain this. So if this was an underground drainage structure, you can't monitor them. There's nobody's going to be crawling down into manholes looking into these systems that we've done for the last 20 years. But this here, what's nice about it, and then if the vegetation, if you have issues with the wetland species that you plant there, if it doesn't work, you just exchange it, which we've done on the other ones that I've built in town, which is Winterberry Estates. Certain ones didn't do well, and we exchanged them and went with the ones that work better in that area. But the good thing about this is you can monitor it, and you can stay up with making sure it's working properly. And being a private subdivision, it can be maintained a lot easier. This is not a public, this is not part of the town of Easton, so this is not a burden on the town of Easton. The people in this neighborhood will take care of this.
And Bill, and to help out people, what is briefly, what's the example of the maintenance of these over time?
Well, what I ended up doing
What type of work's needed is what I mean.
Oh, basically, landscapers go in and you remove you'll get like a sand from the drainage. You'll get it from the road. So when they go in there and plow the roads and all the sand that's coming off the vehicles that go down and bypasses the catch basins that go down into this here and any of the silt, whatever, you have a landscaping company go in and they remove the silt, and you also have them stay on top of the plants. So it's very simple.
Mr. Humphrey, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you need access of any type in order to get to that through the maintenance, or?
Is there access to this?
Yeah, small equipment, or?
You can get small equipment in there, yes. You don't need, honestly, Evish, you don't need small equipment to get into there. It's really all you need is guys go in there with shovels and wheelbarrows. It's not that much sediment. For instance, if you look at the one that I just put in a few years ago, it's a very long swale. We have one swale that's probably, I'd say it's a good 600 feet long. And that's basically what the landscapers would do, is they go down with the wheelbarrows. You really don't want to go in there with equipment because you have all the plants. So you go with the wheelbarrows and you just go in and remove the sediment. You don't need
backhoe or anything like that.
You don't need anything heavy for that, no.
Right,
It's
okay.
all handwork.
That was the question.
Yep.
If you ever want to see one of these, this wasn't Mr. Humphrey's project, but I know it's changed names, but the newer car wash down at the intersection of Washington and Depot. If you remember, there was the car wash, and there was that commercial building, and out behind the car wash, there's a constructed wetlands. It's a great place to actually see one and see how they operate. I think that was the first one I ever saw. But anyways, okay.
If I could add one thing.
Go ahead, Frank.
Discussion here. I believe the plan that was posted is not the most recent plan. The one that is posted is dated February 3rd. The most recent plan is a February 25th date on it. And the most recent plan, just a few minor changes. But one of the changes actually goes right to what Amos was questioning. There is improved access to the basins provided. We have a 15-foot wide strip that goes all the way along the water quality swells all the way to the outlet structure. And not only is the access 15 feet in width, the slope is maintained at no greater than a 15% slope. So although, as Bill was saying, we really don't need to get vehicles in there, the access is provided so that if that need should ever arise, that there is a means of accessing it.
All right, thanks, Frank. Stephanie or board members, anything to add or any questions before I go?
I don't have any other, any comments at this point. As Frank Rivlin just mentioned, we received the revised plans earlier today. I didn't have a chance to look at that. And the peer reviewer was reviewing it, and it looks like they may have issued a report around 6 o'clock this evening, which I have not had a chance to look at, nor would the members of the board.
All right, thank you. Board members, any more questions or comments?
I have a question. It's just more out of curiosity, but the between lot 7 and 8, the swale, if that's what we're calling it, in between the two lots, is there like an easement? Like, how does that like, how is it protected? I guess I'm just curious. Is it like written into the deed? Like,
there is a drainage easement right down the lot line. In fact, on the newer plans that I was just referring to, the easement's a little bit wider. This plan right here does show an easement. It shows the easement is to be bounded. But the most recently revised plans have increased the width of that easement as well.
and just out of curiosity then, so yeah, I don't know what the dimension is there then. Typically are, if like either of these people were to build an addition or something, is the side lot line to the easement then, or to the property line still?
To the property line.
Okay.
Greg, if I could mention too, one of the things that the applicant will need to provide us is with a draft of the homeowners association document. Because as I think Frank was answering, or Bill, though that document lays out what the roles and responsibilities are of the homeowners association in maintaining these structures.
Thanks. So I just have one question. I'm gonna kind of cut in line here before I forget, but you know, I remember sometimes the problem when these projects take so long, and that that's just the process sometimes. I'm not blaming anybody. I know we've all been working very hard to create a special project here. But if we think back, remember originally we talked about we wanted to maintain the grade as much as we could, and you know, Mr. Humphries kind of spoke to that earlier. One of the reasons he's gone with the constructed wetlands. And we said, instead of locating all the trees, maybe do a rough cut through the road, and then we can go out and see what, because there's some fantastic mature deciduous out there. We thought, yeah, maybe we can see. So my point is, now that I look at each one of these houses has 4 subsurface diffusers, I'm hoping, and I'm assuming I don't see why not, given the soils, that we could, when we get to that point, once the road's rough cut, and we look at some trees, just for example, if you look between like lots 9 and 10, you know, if hopefully there's a couple of nice trees there, maybe we can relocate those front corner diffusers or infiltrators so that we could save trees. Is that something that's possible, or are there certain distances?
They don't have to be there, Greg. Those don't have to be there, Greg. You can double them up. It depends. They don't have to be all 4 separated like that. He's just drawing that because it's
right. So I'm saying, like, as you get further into this and you develop plans and you have a more specific floor plan, and then we see what's out there for trees, I just kind of want to remind everybody that we're going to do that step. And I think that's important, because if we can,
Move them all over the place.
All right, great, so. I
And-
think, we can note that in a decision going forward too, if and when we get to that point, so. I'm sorry,
And this-
Stephanie.
I'm sorry, I would just like to remind members of the public that if they wish to speak, they should raise their hand.
I know Dale, I saw Dale,
Yeah, someone else was speaking through the chat, but.
and folks, I just say, if, to those of you that know, if you're going to speak, we need your name and address to start, for the record.
Stephanie, there's 3 with their hand raised right now.
Oh, Greg, can you see the?
I'm sorry, I thought you were working on that. Yeah, Dale Canister.
Okay, sorry, I missed that.
Oh, that's okay. So, yeah, Dale's been up first, and then I see Lisa Marie Barker and Sean Riley. So,
Can you hear me?
unfortunately, yes. No, just kidding.
Thank you, Greg. Dale Carister, 21 South Street. First, this is a unique area for a variety of reasons, but principally at this point is because we're now faced with 2 very large subdivision projects, literally in our front yard and our backyard, both with the Old Forge project that seeks to add 19 homes and the Sawmill project that seeks to add 44. So, as you know, 2 letters have been submitted on behalf of the neighbors, one on behalf of 16 South Street, and the second one more generally. It had 17 folks signing on board. I hope the board has had an opportunity to review that. It was submitted on December 16th, and it was uploaded to Permitize. And we raised 4 major concerns within that letter, and we also had specific sort of asks or requests of the board in connection with those concerns. I would like to be able to address each of those, but for the moment, since we're just talking about the drainage issue, I would like to focus on that. But my hope and our request is that the board not close the public hearing this evening for a variety of reasons, first and foremost of which.
Hey, Dale, if I could just interrupt you, we're not closing the public hearing tonight. So
Okay, perfect, thank you.
If I can save you there. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, I appreciate that. So I'd like to first address the drainage and stormwater issues, and then I would also like to address the additional 3 issues in turn, but I think it makes sense to just address this first, and anybody else who wishes to comment on the drainage, and then in turn address the traffic safety issues that we had raised in the letter, and also the public access issue, and then finally the issue pertaining to the request for the 2 additional units. But first, as far as the drainage is concerned, recall that the last public hearing was on October 18th. I raised concerns as a layman about the drainage issues given the high water table here, here, and the significant incursion that a lot of folks had with water in their basements requiring the use of sump pumps. I was told with some degree of confidence being expressed, I think by the applicant or by the engineer, that their plan properly addressed the drainage issues. Well, 4 days later, on the 22nd, Beta, the town's peer review engineer, came out with a report that was quite strong, in my view, in rejecting the proposed plan. Among other things, it said, do not approve this plan as is, and raised significant concerns, generally stated, which indicated that that plan had potential for a negative impact on the abutters. We would all, and I understand similar confidence has been expressed about the new plan. I certainly hope that those issues that were raised before by Beta have been properly addressed. I have not yet seen, because it's not been uploaded, apparently, the Beta review of these revised plans. Just today, the applicant uploaded the revised stormwater report and responses to the Beta report. I think not only is it incumbent for both the board, but also the public would like to review these in some detail, and we are asking that the project not be approved unless and until Beta has appropriately weighed in and addressed these concerns. And frankly, I think it would be helpful if Beta would participate in a public hearing and confirm not only that they have reviewed, but they are approving and signing off on these drainage plans. As a layman, I want to make just 2 observations, and that is, number one, that these pocket wetlands, and I don't profess to understand quite how they work, but I presume that they also serve as a recharge of the groundwater. In other words, it's collecting the surface water and so forth, but it ultimately getting discharged. And I have concerns that is now water is being flowing towards two pocket wetlands, one which is immediately in the back, just behind the backyard of 36 South Street, which has significant water problems already, and including, sump pump running in the basement frequently and at frequent times of year. And then second, the ones that are on the, I guess it's lamplighter side, or the other portion where you show the upper lots there. The second layman's concern on this is, has the applicant, has the engineer given thought to, given that you're adding all this impervious structure in the fields, sort of in the southern end of the property here now by adding the homes, and then you're running the water down in that direction. Have there been any consideration to having the homes further up north and then having the water recharge, if you will, into the groundwater a little further north from where it is? In other words, have more of the open space in the southerly part of the property. Because you again have a large portion of impervious structure down at this end where the properties are currently already facing a high water table and water incursion. And it seems to me that it wouldn't take much to extend the road by another 50 feet or so and have more of those homes up in the northern part of the property, have more of the open space on the southern part, and have water recharge into the groundwater further north from where it's now being planned. I do have one also question, which is, it was unclear to me based on a review of the revised plans and so forth, how is the water being directed to South Street? I understand there is a stormwater grate there that's immediately next to my property. I'm one of those folks who have a large problem with the sump pump running. How does the water since it's being directed over there, is it underground piping, or is it just being run onto South Street with the hope that it finds its way into that grate? So thank you, and then I'd like to comment further later on the other three issues.
Okay, thank you, Dill. Walter, you want to answer that last, or any of your team, that last catch basin question on South Street, plus any other questions you want to?
I stepped away for just 10 seconds, but I believe I heard most of that. Was the question, correct me if I'm wrong, how does the water get from the roadway into the drainage system on South Street?
Correct. However, the water is being diverted from various portions of the property over to South Street, which is, I think, what I understood you to say. Is it being piped into and connecting directly with the South Street stormwater sewer there, or is it being directed to South Street and then with the hope that it ends up by entering the grate as opposed to going on the adjoining properties?
Well, two things to answer your question. There is a certain amount of water that's already leaving the property through the southwestmost corner of Lot 1. And that was one of our design points. There's a tiny little low spot there where the water will build up and leave. And as it's migrating right now, it goes out and onto South Street. Then that amount of water was taken into consideration in the post-development, where we could not exceed that calculated peak rate and volume. So we have several drainage areas. We have a high point set opposite Lot 2 in the road to capture some water that will be coming down towards the entrance. And that is over the road curb and gutter flow into a catch basin on the right side, north side of the entrance. And then there's also a graded inlet stormwater proprietary separator, which acts as a catch basin. The first catch basin across the street gets plumbed to the stormwater storm scepter, the unit. And that's where the treatment for the total suspended solids takes place, and other trash and oils that may accumulate on the roadway and get picked up. And from there, it will make its way through a new connection to the stormwater system, which is not a sewer system, it's a stormwater management system that's in South Street. There's a catch basin to begin with, and we are intercepting the line after the catch basin to avoid disturbing sediments that might already be in that catch basin. And there's also something called an MS4 permit for the town. So not to jeopardize that, we're intercepting the line between catch basins that are existing on South Street. But overall, the amount of water that's going in that direction, again, is less than the existing conditions, both peak rate and total volume.
So if I understand correctly, you're saying that it will be plumbed directly into that stormwater, the town's stormwater system on South Street, between the two catch basins that exist now on South Street?
That's correct.
Okay.
The
And
water that flows onto South Street right now does get picked up by the pipe and catch basin system that's on South Street. So it's not a new flow to that existing system. It's actually going to be slightly reduced flow to the existing system.
so if I may just ask one quick follow-up question. I've not been aware, and perhaps my neighbors at 16 South Street can speak better to, but water, coming out onto South Street from that property. But you're now directing additional water, I think, in that direction in your additional impervious structures. So some of that water is being directed onto South Street with the hope that it makes its way down to that catch basin. Is that correct?
There's no additional water, sir, leaving the property post-development in that direction. We've done our existing conditions analysis, and we've done our post-development analysis. And the amount of water leaving the property and onto South Street is less post-development than it is existing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, could I raise a point also on this?
Yeah, if you want to respond, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, as the applicant, I just heard that one of the abutters said that there was, that the original plan, Beta came in and said it was completely inadequate and shouldn't be built on, etc. And I know people see that and they don't professionally understand what's going on. They don't understand what happened. The reason this happened was we came out there and we did analysis of the water table. And Beta disagreed with the water table, what we were saying it was. So what we did is we went out and we did more observation holes all around the property. And we brought out, not just Walter, we brought out additional soil scientists. And we agreed that it went up a little bit. But Beta said it went up, how much, Walter? 4 feet?
Close to 4 feet.
4 feet. So what we did is we said, and that's why he said that this subdivision, all the engineering and all the drainage wouldn't work, because he disagreed with the science that we had. Now, we did the science, and we even went in there, we did soil analysis, we even did, one of the scientists went out there and he did analysis of the soils to prove that there was no ions in the soil. But Beta said that the soils got washed out over years, etc. So we said, fine. So what we did is we revised this whole system, and instead of fighting it, we said, okay, let's go with that. And we agreed with them and raised it all. And that's why this has taken so long. Now, I could have just said, you know something, let's bring in more scientists, and after we have 5 or 6 come in here, and we do feel today that the water table that we said it was at was where it was at. We did a lot of analysis out there, and everywhere we went, it was all the same. And we did it in the wettest seasons of the year. And we haven't done it just for 1 month. We've done it at different times of the years, So, but we're going with what Beta said they felt that it was at, and we're working with that. And that's what's taken us so long. Because by doing that, obviously it raises the drainage pipes, and by doing that, would have to raise the subdivision. But we've always wanted to go with this type of constructive wetlands. And unfortunately, we didn't have any issues with that. We've been doing constructive wetlands for years now. It's finally we've just agreed upon that that's the way we want to go with it, and we have. And now, but right from the get-go, I thought this was designed properly. But now what we're doing is we're using a third party and to work with an outside party that I'm not hiring, and we're agreeing with his water table, and that's how we're working it back. So I just wanted to point that out, that this wasn't just a plan done and it was just, oh, this is terrible. We disagreed with it, but we went forward with it and redesigned it. I just want to make that point.
Okay, thank you, Bill, appreciate it. All right, so next, unless any board members want to respond to that, I think we can go to Lisa Marie Barker.
Okay, hold on, I have to.
So Ms. Barker, when they call you,
Yep,
if you
yep.
name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Lisa Marie Barker, 531 Foundry Street in North Easton. We are abutters on the south side of the property, and I am interested in understanding whether what you're describing as being no more water going onto South Street by the constructed wetland and this proposed is also true of the back of our property, like Mr. Carrister and many others that have participated in submitting the letter. We do have a constant battle with water on this property, and I'd like to just understand what you expect the potential impact to be on our property.
Okay.
I noticed where that plan is actually inaccurate. It indicates we're at 537. That's actually the property next to us. Jeanette Menino is 537. We are 531. But where your cursor is our property.
So the bottom property on the map.
Correct.
If you will. Okay. Frank, you might want to take a note of that for correction. So, gentlemen, anyone for your team want to address that question?
I'd be glad to address it. One little dilemma, the plan that's up on the screen is not the most recent plan, as Stephanie has already told us. It would clarify.
Well, do any of you have the most recent plan that you can share? Handy, or do one of us? If you want, I can jump onto Permanise and grab a copy.
You want me to, I can get it from Permanise if Walter doesn't have it handy.
Yeah, well,
So
that's the
I'm gonna
quickest.
stop sharing for a minute while I find it.
Yeah, I have to switch computers at the moment, sorry.
No problem. Anybody know any jokes? He's tough room.
Not that we can tell over the public meeting, though.
This is what 28 months of Zoom meetings does to
I've
you.
got an old one if you want to hear it. It's really bad.
I probably don't want to hear anything.
As long as it's
that's really
bad groan,
I don't know, really
not-
bad. You mean just a bad joke? Then no, we don't need.
Just a groaning joke as opposed to.
No, I like it. But
All right.
All right, let's see, the date 2/25.
You're nodding yes.
It's opening. Which page should I go to?
it would be 6 or 7, Stephanie.
Okay, I've got it.
I want to find it on my other screen here. It would be 7.
Which is what I have up right now.
Yeah.
And this is the area.
Right, if you could zoom in down on that lower wetlands, please.
How's that?
That's good, thank you. So the question was, I believe, this first 537 is actually 531 Foundry Street for Ms. Parker's address.
That's correct.
You wanted to know if there's any, going to be any impact onto your property.
I'd like to know what the impact is intended to be, yes.
This constructed wetlands, I got to jump out of the screen over here, excuse me, 1 second. In my stormwater management report, I document the design points. The first, design point 4 is actually a low spot right here under an existing contour 124. Beta had reviewed the project, did a site walkthrough, and pointed out that there was a micro-topographic area in here that was slightly lower than the existing stone wall, and they were correct. Frank Ryland went out and grabbed additional shots, and that's how we're able to document that there's an elevation of 124 there. So what I did in my stormwater model, both existing and post conditions, first the existing, I modeled this small depression, and the model shows that there is some water that's going to leave through the wall once it gets past an elevation roughly 125. You don't see it on the screen, but there's plenty of ground shots that Frank collected, so we have numerous numbers. Most of them are roughly right around 125. Frank can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're in that ballpark. And the lowest one happens to be right at the easterly property line, right above the number 149.76, pretty much thereabouts. So that was my estimation where water would break through that wall, and that was considered the design point. Now, this is under extreme amounts of rains. The 2-year storm, no, there'd be no rainfall that would leave the property, but under 10, 25, and the 100-year, which we're required to monitor, there will be some stormwater that will leave the property. And it would generally head through the wall in multiple directions, but principally, it would start right at where I show the outlet for this constructed wetlands, PW2. They call it a pocket wetland. We have an outlet control structure here that will bleed a very minimal amount of water and come out this flat end swale before the wall, and it will make its way through the wall. Under the worst storm event, I've got these numbers embedded in the stormwater management report. We have a nice little table that shows you got about 2 CFS under a 100-year storm that's leaving the property in that general vicinity. Post-construction, we're going to have 0.1 CFS. So we substantially reduced the amount of water that's going to be flowing freely out in that direction through this flat end swale. There will be no water flowing anywhere else out of the berm on this constructed wetland, as there are no outlet control structures other than this first one on one side of the broad-crested weir and another one at the beginning of the broad-crested weir. We have 2 of them. The first one is to direct water heading towards the vegetated wetlands, and again, that'll be a minimal amount of water. The amount of water that is designed to leave these 2 wetlands is substantially less flowing through these pipes or over this berm than the current conditions indicate, excuse me.
Walter, just one more, can I interrupt you just for a second? Maybe this will help with the neighbors' questions. Just wondering, in a typical, in a bad storm event, and you can tell me, is that a 50-year storm, 100-year storm, 25-year storm? What is the top, worst case scenario? What is the top elevation of pooling water in this wetlands?
It's going to be the 100-year event. It's the largest storm we're required to design for, which is a 7 inches of rainfall over a 24-hour event. And the elevation for that wetlands is going to be 127.33. That'll be the highest point inside that wetlands. And if we can zoom in, we have a berm, broad crested weir elevation of 127.25. So we're gonna have hundredths of an inch. We're gonna have 8 to 8 hundredths of a foot of water flowing over that broad crested weir. And for a minimal amount of time. This is not for the whole storm. Usually when we develop these hydrographs, you'll see it peak at about 13 or 14 hours into the storm, and you'll have a little bit of discharge right around that time period over that broad crested weir. So that's the highest point.
Why is it gonna be a higher elevation than the outlet? Is the outlet intended to, to serve as an outlet, obviously before the weir?
Yes, that's correct, Peter. The two outlets, concrete cylindrical structures, they have 2-inch diameter holes on them, set at what's called the normal pool elevation, which the elevation for these two structures, the first one is set at normal pool. The second one, we didn't have to do that, we just needed one. The second one is set higher, so it's going to take that 0.1 CFR that I described.
So what aspect of this design requires that the outlet be near the adjacent properties, whereas the weir is set back within the subject property?
Access, for one, we have developed this access over to this weir, which is 15 feet wide with a maximum slope of no more than 15%. In order to get at this first outlet control structure, the flared end swale, the broad crested weir, and it's also wide enough and can support vehicular weight to get at the second outlet control structure if necessary. And the second one truly is very minor and a very far-reaching backup.
Okay, so after the peer review, you'll be able to show us the numbers which indicate how much water how much more water or less water will flow out of the outlets, in a 100-year storm?
Yes, we've actually already shown that.
I figured I'd just wait instead of asking now. I'll just ask later once that's squared away. Is that okay?
Mr. Hermano, can you also speak to what the impact is going to be to the trees that are in that area to construct this?
Well, in order to make this pocket wetlands with this berm, the vegetation existing would have to be removed.
That's what I was afraid of.
There's a lot of low, young pine saplings, if I recall, within the footprint of the job site. I know that there are some older growth.
There's some very mature trees in that area.
Yeah, I think they may be on or off the property though, around the stone wall side of that corner.
There are trees on our property side that are mature, but there are also many trees on the opposite side of the wall from what our property is that are mature.
Okay, so, yeah, we do have to deal with the buffer zone. That's on my list, in that area, so we're required, so I have to think about that. But we're getting a little long in the night here, and so obviously it's not gonna be the last hearing, so I just we've got a few more people to get to, so I'm gonna try to move us along a little bit.
I appreciate your time.
Sure, thank you, appreciate your input, Ms. Barker. Next up is Sean Riley.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Okay, sure.
All right, yes, Sean Riley, professional engineer with Coastal Engineering Company, 60 Cranberry Highway in Orleans. We're representing Gaslight Village condominiums to the east of the wetland. We're not going to comment right now on any of the proposed drainage. It looks like they're working through the details, and you've got a outside consultant that's peer reviewing it. So we'll take a look at their comments. One of the major concerns being on both sides of design of these subdivisions and also with considerations of abutters is what happens to the construction period runoff. Not so much the erosion or sedimentation control, but the actual runoff until these pocket wetlands and the drainage is brought online and in full use. A lot of times you have runoff as soon as these trees are cleared. And how is that to be handled? I looked through the stormwater pollution prevention plan, and there's a quick blurb about pass-through of water, but there wasn't any discussion about any deep detention basins or how that construction period runoff was going to be handled.
Can I talk on that, Greg?
Sure, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, so when we build, I saw that comment on from one of the abutters, and we're not going in there and the comment was, how are we going to control, I believe the way it was read was, how are we going to control the runoff, et cetera, and when we go in there and remove all the trees and we start going into construction, building the houses, et cetera. But what we're doing is we're going to go in there and put the road in first and actively build the drainage and get the drainage online. This is not a big subdivision. The road's only, I think, what is it, Walter, 1,000 feet long?
A little over that, slightly around there, Bill, yes.
Yeah, so we'll go in there and do the road and the drainage first, so we can control all that. So that'll happen before we start doing the houses. So we'll go in there and build the road, do the drainage, and then go into starting the houses. So we'll have that already controlled.
So that you wouldn't have an issue with that being a condition of the planning board?
Of what?
Condition that's put on the project? That be installed prior to pulling any building permits? I've seen this before in other subdivisions where, I haven't worked with you before, Mr. Humphrey, and where we've gotten the word from the developer that they were going to do that on good faith, and it just hasn't happened, and some of the abutters have been flooded out, and we've had to go to court for it. So if you wouldn't mind, we wouldn't.
Well, I haven't worked with you before, but I've been doing this for a long time in the town of Easton, and I think I've never had this happen to me in Easton. I've built, I don't know, 20 subdivisions in the town. I think the town can trust with me when I build something. I don't want to go here online and just say how I'm going to exactly do it and be so defined on this. I'd rather work with the town, talk with Beta, because I have to completely look at, first of all, we don't have an approved subdivision, so I can't go saying that because I don't have it completely 100% approved. But I'm sorry that some of your other clients have washed away subdivisions, et cetera. That's not my intent here. I live in the town. I've been on boards in the town. And, you know, sometimes you have to work with a little bit of trust when you're building in your own town. So I do want to build it the right way and go in there. If there's a certain part of it I can't do right at the time, I can't say I can't build it 100% then start building houses. I can't do that right now. But the next meeting, once we get it approved, I can address that better.
Okay. Great. Mr. O'Reilly, anything else? Or good. Mr. O'Reilly, is that it for your questions?
Sorry, I was automatically muted there. The proximity of some of the condominiums adjacent to that wetland, there isn't a whole lot of elevation free between the water level in that wetland. And all it's really going to take is, you know, once the trees are cleared, the site's cleared and grubbed, you know, the road binder goes in, some of the structures get put in. All it's going to take is one good rainstorm to fill up that wetland if there aren't any depressions made to retain that water. And I'm just concerned that they'll see water in there in the condominiums that are in close proximity to that wetland. So I just wanted to make sure that there was assurance in place from the planning board that the drainage will be addressed during the construction period.
And that's a standard requirement, Greg.
Right.
That there be construction period erosion controls in place.
Yeah, I think
Plan be submitted ahead of time.
Right. If anyone, I know folks, sometimes those of us on boards or those of us presenting projects, you know, we take things for granted because it's what we do for a living, and old timers like us have been doing it for a while. But between conditions we put in the decision, if and when the board votes to approve a project, and the construction details, and there's a whole set of boilerplate things which, right, that all go to inspecting construction, and there's even a construction details plan, part of the full set. So these issues are all are addressed. And it's important to remember that we have at least two licensed engineers that work on these, the applicant's engineer and then peer review. And, peer review, their basic job is to go out and confirm that the proposed system meets all of the town's requirements in terms of stormwater management in the bylaws. And sometimes there's, given back, there's always more than one way to skin a cat, but that all of those concerns are, because we want to make sure the water, any water that leaves the site leaves appropriately, and that most of it stays on board. That's why you see things like infiltration chambers at each of the houses. And, all the boards, we take this very serious, and Mr. Humphrey certainly is familiar with the process, having worked for many years in the system, as they say. So next,
Reassuring to hear that. Thank you.
sure. Fran Masters. We have not done Fran Masters yet, right?
Nope.
So, all right, Fran Masters, and then, and just real quick before Fran Masters starts, I did see it. We had a Dale Carristrade asked you just why and I deleted it by mistake, Dale, but he basically wanted to know if the water entering the constructed wetlands, what happens to it? Does it infiltrate there? Does it move? So if you guys could just speak to that quickly.
Right now? Sorry, what?
Preferably, I'd like to go to bed at some point.
Right. No, I'm glad you asked. I'm glad someone asked that question. There's a thing called a water budget that we were required to produce for this constructed wetlands. It's a Mass DEP requirement. And the water budget considers many factors: soil moisture, soil retention, evapotranspiration, precipitation, both rainfall, snowfall, and also plant uptake. There's a couple other factors. I might have missed a few. It's a very complicated process, but we've provided a water budget that has all of these put together in a nice graph, and it shows that we will have no more than 1 month of a drying period. You're not supposed to have more than 2. And through this graphical presentation in our water budget, we've shown that we will only have 1 month, typically, I think it was June to July, based on the past 10 years of precipitation values, that will have a slight drying event. But the wetlands, we have to do this budget and provide it to assure that the wetlands will thrive. Now, this is a stormwater structure that's set at or about the water table. And as the reviewer has pointed out, the peer reviewer, we do not get a recharge value for constructed wetlands because they're at the water table. It's my humble belief that there is some minor recharge that will go on as the water table rises and falls, but we've not asked for, and we cannot ask for any credit for that recharge. But in the wetland, you typically have a fine balance between moisture loss to the atmosphere and the plant uptake compared to the precipitation that's coming down. So hopefully I answered that question, but also if I could take 1 second to mention that all of the piping has been thoroughly analyzed on this roadway. That was another peer review concern, that we document that the piping will work. And we've also provided extensive spreadsheets, a spreadsheet inside the stormwater management report, backed up with my model, and that documents all of the piping works. There'll be no excess water to leave any of the structures in the roadway during the highest year storm event. So if anyone has any concerns about where water is going, it's being contained in the pipes and the constructed wetlands. But again, earlier, as I mentioned, a portion does go to South Street as it already is. So that's all I wanted to say on that. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so Fran Masters, name and address for the record, and feel free to ask away.
Fran Masters, 36 South Street. I'm in a butter over where the wetlands is going to be. My sump pump runs 12 months a year as it is now. In fact, when I don't hear it running, I call the repairman. I have a tremendous amount of water also in my backyard. And I think I'm a very vulnerable property, and I am quite concerned, like everybody else is, what will happen with the wetlands right behind me and with possible additional water that my system won't be able to handle.
Okay, thank you. And I would point out one thing. I often point this out to some of the groups of abutters who get on various projects. And being a fellow resident of Easton, up a mile up the road on Connecticut Ave for 32 or 33 years now. My house was built in 1815. It was the third house ever built on Quanticket, and I have 3 sump pumps that go 24/7 too. Because back when our houses were built, the water table was never taken into account, and we all know the wonderful soil in parts. This property is a little different, but I'm in the Quanticket, along with Mr. Anderson, the Quanticket mud flats, where you can dig a hole in August 2 feet down and you'll hit water, even if it hasn't rained for 2 months. So the point being that even beyond the stormwater management that we're talking tonight, which is kind of technical, all of these houses and all when they go in are going to be well above, they're going to be 4 feet above the water table. These, all these old houses in Easton that talk about sump pumps, you can't control groundwater. Who knows where it's coming from sometimes, or we can look at engineering a subdivision to ensure that it all stays within the outline of the property, or if it's being released, that it's nowhere, no more than it is now, to try to leave things the way it was found. But that doesn't help many of us that have water table issues. So it's just, I think it's just important to know sometimes that many of these water issues we have are caused by the fact that our houses are just too low, or there wasn't engineered gravel and pumping systems put in. When I used to build houses, and I'd tell people, I can guarantee you a dry basement with a sump pump, because that's the only way you're ever going to control groundwater. So, anyways, with that, I didn't mean to go on so long. If any of the team want to address Ms. Masters' question or comment,
I'll take a crack at it. All right, 36 South Street, I believe, if I'm wrong, that would be to the south.
We're behind lots 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, right, southwest. About.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, we have a design.
On the map, Stephanie?
Excuse me?
Can we see it on the map? Oh, there we go.
Yep, it's right here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that drainage area, that's a post drainage area, we call it subcatchment number 13. And the pre-drainage on the previous sheet, if you could just for 1 second, Stephanie, go to the previous sheet, please. That's it, thank you. At the recommendation of the peer reviewer, I took subcatchment 2 and I broke it out into 2 parts. And what you see with the arrows is the flow path of water over land, stormwater that is, both for subcatchment 2 and 2A, which is, I believe, right against the Ms. Masters that had the question. And you can see DP2, that's the lowest spot where the water is going to go existing right now into that corner. And from there, it's going to leave the property and make its way onto South Street. That area is heavily treed. There's a lot of vegetation. And I do not believe that area will be disturbed post-development. And Mr. Humphries can back me up on that one. We've shown a tree line existing in the back of the property. But we've broken up both of those drainage areas. If you could now, Stephanie, go to that previous sheet you were on, please. So we still have design point number 2. We still have flow going in that direction. And for this subcatchment, number 13, the amount of flow heading in that direction is less than subcatchment 2A, which was the existing conditions. And we've documented less peak rate and volume of flow heading to that point, which would be closest to the questionnaire. And again, 9 and 10, these other subcatchments, they make up a portion of the other existing subcatchment number 2. And that's why we've already talked about that, where the water will go into a separator here and then eventually into the existing system in the street by pipes under the roadway. All that explains how there's less water heading in that direction. That's all I got.
Greg, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay, so this has gone for a while, so we'll take one last, I see Robin Maria Wilson just put up, this is gonna be the last public comment that I take for tonight. Just so folks know, this is not the last meeting, and I suspect we'll be hearing a little bit back from peer review that may change things, or just tweak things given the complexity and nature of this. So, and we have many other items to get to tonight. So, anyways, if we have queued up the Wilsons.
Thank you, Greg. This is Rob Wilson, 16 South Street. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Everybody hear okay?
Okay.
Yes.
So I'd just like to attest to Fran's situation, and I think what she was driving at was Parker Wetlands number 2. It's going to introduce water into the water table, and I question the wisdom of the proximity of Parker Wetland number 2 to her property is the question. Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Any other team want to speak to the location criteria for that?
Sure, I gladly can speak on that. The constructed wetlands is designed, we broke up the system into 2 parts. Given the elevation on the property, this location right here is a low spot to receive and treat and manage accordingly the water from about half the project. The other constructed wetlands, a little bit higher up on the project, that'll take the end of the road, roughly that half of the project. So water flows downhill. We chose those low spots in order to put in these 2 constructed wetland systems. And as I said before, we do not get a value credit for recharge. I think there is some water that will go into the environment, recharge the environment. It would have to be at or above the water table. For that lower wetlands closest to the questionnaire, that water table over there, we monitored that for the highest point. It was 123.42, and the ground is roughly 2 feet higher than that right now. So we know that there's a high water table at that location. And for this wetlands, the bottom of the wetlands is designed at 124, which is roughly 6 inches higher than the highest groundwater that we have to hold for that corner. And the water only accumulates at an elevation greater than 124 until it spills over to our outlet control structures. So for that reason is why I say there will be slight recharge, where there will be some water that goes into the environment. Even though constructed wetlands, you're not allowed a recharge. We are roughly 6 inches above the high water mark, so it's just simple science. There is some water that has to enter the environment over there, but a lot of this water, it's a very widespread shallow system, will be also taken up by the vegetation and other factors like evapotranspiration.
Would it be an option to put in a monitoring point for her so you would know the before and after consequences? Her situation is really dire.
I'll leave that to Bill and the board.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Just wondering if a monitoring point can be put in, Bill, just so we know what the water table is before and after the project. And if it is exacerbated by the project, then we'd have some history to help resolve her issue if it
We
gets
did
worse.
we did do the soil, we did test pits over there, we did more, how many test pits did we do there, Walter?
We did 5 test pits down in
5
the
test pits.
wetlands.
So we weren't going by, Rob, when we're doing that, we're not going by the water table, we're going by the soils. So, Walter, you want to explain that, please? I'm not a soil scientist. Can you tell what they do now, the state?
Oh, sure, Bill. When we do a deep hole observation, we're looking for what's called modeling. It's technically a redoxymorphic feature. And the modeling is a point in time. It may have occurred 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, but it's a point in time where the water has risen to a certain elevation and stayed there long enough that it would begin to deplete the minerals in the soil, and you have this reddish band or spotting sometimes. That would be the result, telltale sign that the water stood there at one time. And the high water mark that we selected was test pit, we call it number 5, which was higher than the other 4. And again, that was at 123.42, if I'm correct. So we've taken, we follow the rules and regulations for determining the high groundwater mark, and we've held the highest point for development in this area.
And Walter, tell them also why, and Greg, this goes back to what you were just saying with water in the basement in the town of Easton. So tell them what we used to do, we would go onto a lot and we would dig and we would try to find where the water was. But the water in the town of Easton, the soils are so tight, the water can change drastically. It go up and down, up and down. So you could monitor something for 20 years and that water table might not ever reach that. It could go 50 years and never reach that soil that you're talking about right now. So you can monitor 50 years, build the house, and you still get water in the basement because you didn't do what the state recommends now doing the soils to show you where it was at one time. Could have been 500 years ago. So we're doing it we're not monitoring for 1-2 years. We're monitoring it to like when God created the earth. Basically, that's what you're doing. You're looking at the soils. So the soils tell you where the water was at one time. Now it's a better way. So that's why new houses that are built don't tend to get water in the basement because we're a lot higher now. We're building by these soils now.
Yeah, that is correct, Bill. The modeling that is developed in that area, in those soils, it may have occurred a millennia ago.
So that's what I'm saying, Rob. You could go and study that and you could put pipes in the ground. It might never reach that elevation that we're saying it's at. It's not those monitoring wells don't work that well. They just, because what happens if you have dry season for 10 years? And I can't say I'm not going to build a subdivision for 10 years from now. I have to go by the right science to do this. And this is what the state wants us to do septic systems from. That's how we build our septic systems now. That's why you see all these septic systems built out of the ground because they were all built too low before.
I think if I may, as the chair has alluded to, the area is notorious for high water and maybe soils that are not quite as permeable as people would like. So you have water that will stand and stay at a certain elevation. And I suspect the homes in the area might have foundations that are lower to the ground, top of foundation that is, and if you have a basement, with a water table being noted 2 feet below grade on our site, I'm not surprised that neighbors don't have sump pumps in order to keep water out of their basements. It's an existing condition.
Okay, great. So I think so I guess I've kind of closed out the public input for tonight. And just board members or Stephanie, any last questions or comments before I ask for continuance?
I have none.
Greg, can I add one more thing, please? Just
briefly, please, Bill.
1 second. Okay. Walter, this is directed to you. I heard concerns from the people that were to the south of the project. Can we put trees going around the top of the berm of that basin on the most south part of the property.
Well, the berm is supposed to have, lawn and grass growing on it, Bill.
But what about on the high point?
The high point,
I just think if we can do that, it would be a nice buffer for the neighbors.
I'd have to think about that, Bill. You gotta be careful with, roots invading and destroying the structure.
But while we're on that, that was I who brought that up, and you know, as you were, because we're looking, you know, we're required a 25-foot buffer on this, and this originally was going to stay as a nice natural buffer. So, and I understand it's tight in there, staying out of the 100-foot buffer, etc. But if I'm a property owner, if I'm in a butter and I hear that during a 100-year storm, which granted happens in theory once every 100 years, that the water is 3 feet above my backyard, I think we need to explain how that berm is going to work. Not tonight, you know, next time. And we're going to have to figure out a buffer there. So I know it's tight, but
I think it can be done.
I don't want to. We talk about we're going to save all this history and do all this beautiful work, and here's one of the closest property, or really 3 or 4 properties, and I don't want to put a giant, you know, a big scar in the earth that we don't bring back to some sort of natural state. And I understand the roots and all can affect it, and we can't have that, but so that needs a little attention, I think.
Yeah.
So, all right, so our next meeting is actually next a week from today, on the 7th, and then after that, 2 weeks out, I believe, right on the 20th.
On the 21st.
21st. So, I don't know if everything's going to be ready to, you know, a week from today. We certainly can continue to then, and then if, you know, depending, I just, it's kind of up in the air where we haven't heard back from peer review, so depending on what happens there. And I don't know what you guys need for a quick turnaround, but and I understand they want to get going, spring building season's coming, but we've been waiting for so long. I don't want to rush this important process either, this part of it. I think that we need to give both the board and citizens of the town and the abutters, especially, you know, the due time. So anyways, I guess we can, if we want to, continue it to the next meeting, and then just see. I mean, it's only, that means you're gonna get stuff in about 2 or 3 days. But, or should we kick it out to the one after? I'll throw that to you guys.
We have everything in. We have everything in for right now, correct, Walter? Frank?
Yeah. We have not really had a chance to read over the comments that Stephanie said came in about 6 o'clock today from the review engineer. But I really don't see a lot that needs to be done at this time. I would request that we continue just for the 1 week. And if something does come up, we can always ask for further continuance beyond that. But at the moment,
And just one thing I noticed, I'm sorry to interrupt, I'm just trying to speed this up. One thing that's still missing is the landscaping plan, you know, for the trees on the road that's called out in the subdivision rules and regs. So if we can get that incorporated, that should be pretty simple. And you might want to take a look. You have in some places you represent, for example, I see lot 3, you have a green line, a green pochette line, which shows limit of work, but you have infiltrators have now gone in those. So we need to either move those infiltrators or move that undisturbed line to be accurate. So someone make a motion, please, for continuing to
March 7th.
Anderson, second.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, Strange eye.
Shane, aye.
Elsar, aye.
Stetson recusing himself.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Okay. Next up, 555 Foundry Street, garage location. I think I saw Rick Lincoln in the audience at one point.
Yeah, so Greg, at the last meeting, we kind of, we were offered a few options for the garage location. We liked option B. And asked that be shown on a plan with the other changes that we had talked about over the last couple of meetings. And that's what is provided. It's there with our red line changes that you can take a quick look at if that's how you guys want to proceed.
Yeah, well, I guess having not been at that meeting, does this plan represent what you guys agreed to?
It does.
It does, it has the trees, it has the grass.
Rick, since you spoke, you wanna identify yourself for the record, please?
Yeah, sorry. Rick Lincoln with Conical Building, the applicant.
All right, thank you. So Peter, you're saying that this does represent, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, sorry.
Oh, yeah, looks like it. Anyone else? Anyone else? Good.
They built the entranceway and they connected on the other side for more landscape.
Yeah, if you scroll down, Stephanie, if you don't mind, Greg, that's a new one on Greg there. So I kind of offered to try and eliminate that dangerous entrance down there. Yeah, all the asphalt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just vegetate all that, so.
So everybody good with this?
I'll make a motion to approve the minor modification to this plan.
Any further discussion? Hearing and, let me just see the hands up from the last meeting. Lisa and Dale, if you guys could just drop your hands, it would just be easier on this end. Appreciate it. Okay, hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, Strange eye.
Sharon, aye.
Balsaric, aye.
That's an aye.
That is unanimous. Right, thank you, Mr. Lincoln.
Thanks, guys.
Next up, Barron Estates Cash Surety Agreement, KOK Enterprises. I know there was an attached letter in our package that we received last Thursday. Seemed pretty straightforward.
I didn't see that they filed their articles of dissolution with the, with the state, so, can we ask for that and then take a look at it next time, or is there a backstory to this that I don't know that we should just accept it?
Stephanie, this is you. I haven't had a conversation with anyone regarding this. So.
Mr. Koska came in and basically said that he did dissolve the organizational business structure and submitted this request. I didn't ask for letters of dissolution.
Yeah, I just checked and it looked like it was still, they filed the annual report in February. I didn't see any, so that was filed with the state, but I didn't see the articles of dissolution, so it was my thinking that we would do that when we see that KLK is no longer, going into.
Why don't we, just so we could clear the docket, and move this to the administration level, would it be wise to maybe just vote on, contingent upon the planning director receiving said document? So we can take it back to the board. I will entertain that motion.
So moved.
Second, anybody?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Deborah. Suzanne, did you get all that okay?
Yes.
All right. We have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, Strange eye.
Stetson aye. Stetson aye.
Just gets ugly sometimes. Thank you. All right. Might as well bang out the zoning amendments. I think they'll be pretty quick. Stephanie sent them to us. I think they were towards, they're right after the Costco letter, or after the, three things.
I think I sent
They're
them.
after the Starbucks side.
Are they after the Starbucks?
Yeah, they're after the Starbucks.
There they are, okay. Do you want me to share my screen?
Sure. I assume you're sharing the same thing you sent to us, right?
Yeah, yes.
And I assume anything highlighted in yellow is a change.
Correct.
All right, the floor is yours.
Okay, so the first article is to allow self-storage as a special, in the way I wrote it, and this is suggested for discussion by the board, as a use by special permit in specified business and commercial districts. So in the traditional zoning districts, I added it to each of the districts, of course, not allowed in the residential zones, and then allowed in the business industrial, Ely, and I don't know what NM is. Eleemosynary, I think that was supposed to be an N for no. And then municipal, question mark. I mean, we
That's a
wouldn't
special
have-
permit from the, New Mexico plan.
Yeah, clearly,
Yeah, I mean,
so,
I guess if you look at the
that was
chart,
intended to be, no, so,
if you look at the other chart, other uses are a no for municipal, you know, I mean.
yes, yeah, I think municipal and eleemosynary should be a no.
Mhm, yeah.
So I'm gonna change those here. Oops, it's, you know what, I can't, but I have it.
Yeah.
And then what was your intention on, 24 self-storage when you left those blank to see what the board thought?
Yes, so within the special zoning districts, the question was, does the board want to allow those in all of the districts except the Furnace Village residential? So that was a question. Now we'll leave it to the board to decide.
And the purpose of tonight, we're just discussing, and then our public hearing is.
This begins the public
When is the public hearing?
or no, Suzanne, when is at the next?
March 21st.
Yeah,
Yeah,
March.
we'll have to read it in.
So this is, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think from my 2 cents worth, yeah, I mean, I think what you did up top was special permit for planning board and business and industrial. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then down here, Furnace Village residential, I would say no for obvious reasons. Furnace Village business, I would say no. But don't forget that business is just that little pocket district.
Right.
At the end of Quanticut. And then it's, okay, Eastman, Depot, and then the Queesit districts. And Village Business District, I would say no, right? I mean,
That's
that's downtown Northeast.
Yep.
And then the other ones, I guess, a little, I think those are obvious no's, but then the rest are up for.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess the way I would slightly complicate this is that it seems that, self-storage always needs to be right in front of the road. Maybe they think it's great advertising. But I don't really think that's the best look, that just to put a bunch of self-storage units right against the road. So I don't know if, our proposal would involve some type of, design standards that hopefully wouldn't just get waved away when they say that they need to do this and that to make it work.
That's an excellent point. The fact that in sort of the genesis of this coming up, over the last couple of years, I know Stephanie has had folks, kind of calling in just in general. So a few times we've looked at self-storage and we, and realized we didn't really have it in there. And then there was a firm that came in and talked to us, maybe half a year ago or so, and they were proposing sort of a mixed-use project, or as part of a mixed-use project. Maybe there was a residential element in one building, and then a separate building, they had commercial on the ground floor, restaurant or services or whatever. And then above it was self-storage. But the way it was that they showed some buildings in, one was in Brookline, I think one was in Hopkinton, a couple of towns where some thought had been put in, and right, it wasn't the big, what you see on the highway, or on a Route 1. It wasn't this giant hollow building with a bunch of windows and you see all the orange doors. It was made to look like, you wouldn't know it was self-storage. So under a special permit, if it was in a location that maybe was not your conventional self-storage setup, but we felt would make sense or would be a good part of the project, it would give us the ability to say, okay, hey, if it's hidden and we can control some. So it gives us an opportunity to look at it, but it's not by right, in certain districts. That may still not do it for you, but that's why we have these discussions. So that's why we kind of wanted to look at it. And Stephanie, or maybe it's here, but I didn't think I said, we need to come up with a definition for it, right? To add it to the definitions for self-storage.
Yeah, I don't think we have one because.
So we'll have to do that, but, so we don't necessarily need to decide this tonight, correct?
Right.
I mean, we can just.
we can, So my thought was, if the board is thinking yes, generally, but you, and again, because it's a special permit, that does give you flexibility, in requiring site, like.
Yeah, I'm not against it, I was just saying, I was just pointing out that.
Sure. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this, just because it's been such a long meeting and we still got a ways to go? Why don't we, in the Queesit, I propose in the Queesit A, B, and Cs, and then in the Furnace Village, Eastman and Depot, why don't we by now do it special permit by planning board, so it's in there, and we can advertise and all that, and then, you know, then between the next meeting and then at the hearing, we can, and you guys have some time to sort of digest and contemplate. Yeah, then we can, you know, change it if we want to, or eliminate it, or, you know, whatever we decide. Does that sound good?
I'm sorry, I feel like I didn't quite hear what you said about the Queesit.
So I'm proposing that in the 3 Queesits for now, just to get this checked off tonight, and then this isn't, you know, we can tweak this all we want, but just so we can get something published. So all Queesit districts, A, B, and C, allow it by special permit by the planning board.
Okay.
Village Business District, no, because that's the historic district and it's so tight down there and it's just not gonna work there, it's not. And then Furnace Village, Eastman and Depot, same thing, special permit by planning board. And then no in the Furnace Village Business, because it's sort of that one little historic pocket, and no in the Furnace Village Residential, for obvious reasons.
If we, I know we're still just gonna be discussing it, and so, yeah, in the interest of time, we can continue to discuss it next time. But if we allow it by special permit, if they meet all of the criteria, aren't we not really allowed to deny it? And so I guess I'm just saying, I think there are probably certain sections, or maybe all of Queesit, that I think, if we're really trying to revamp that, do we really want to see self-storage in that area?
Yeah, maybe not. You know, maybe not. Or we might say, what if part of a larger project in there? Because you're thinking of, you say, okay, well, you know,
yeah, I can see
maybe
that.
it's necessary, but I could see where we could condition a special permit that we'd have to, we would get architectural approval, because we don't want, you know, we want it to look like a continuation of the rest of the building. But again, you know, maybe we decide not against it, but we could do something like that with a special permit. So something to contemplate. But I think we should just, again, for the interest of time, I don't want to keep you guys all night. Why don't we park that one for there, because we have at least 2 more times we can discuss it, and let's just, you know, think about it and see what you think. Sound good? Okay.
And the next one, and I don't have the table in there, since it was unworkable in the format that it was in, but I have it. Simply what we want to do is, we're proposing adding the allowance of outdoor dining in the Queesit Commercial Smart Growth Overlay District subzones B and C, which are zones that also allow restaurants and dining. Subzone A does not.
And is it by special permit, or what's the process?
I put it with site plan review, and it would be an accessory use to a restaurant.
Okay.
And I think with site plan review, it would still need to come before the board for a review, but.
Okay, well, I guess we can review it once we have the text of it. And then next I see, what, dog kennel, I guess?
Yes, and in this instance, section 235.14 under accessory uses prohibits, and explicitly prohibits kennels in the residential district. And under the table of uses, it allowed dog kennels by special permit with the Zoning Board of Appeals. So there were 2 things. One, the proposal was to prohibit, under the table of uses, not allow kennels in residential districts. And also, yeah, that was that for that one. And that would be consistent with the text where it prohibits dog kennels in a residential district.
Okay, yeah, I think we had talked about that before, they're just sort of inconsistent. Because this is to handle an inconsistency in the
Right.
written bylaws, right? So it's
Yeah.
just-
So it will be no?
Correct.
No, correct.
Correct. And that just seems to make sense.
So bed and breakfast, this is the first I heard of this. What's,
Just
oh,
like
I'm sorry.
Greg, we're looking for boarding my dog. I figured out that dog kennel need a little more definition. There are people with 5, 6, 8 dogs on their houses and they are giving that service to people. And I don't know if that's a dog kennel or not. Not sure.
5 or more dogs under, so our zoning refers back to the state definition of a kennel, dog kennel, and 5 or more dogs is considered a kennel.
Okay. Okay, so there is a definition. Is that definition here in our bylaws?
It is, and it refers to, so hold on.
You can look at that.
Yeah, I mean, that's
We need the definitions, that's all.
kennel. It refers to the state Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 137A.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next one is the flexible development, and this was to provide clarification regarding the front yard setback in the text. The code talks about the board.
We went past bed and breakfast.
I thought bed and breakfast came after this. Bed and breakfast is after flexible development.
Not the way you wrote the document.
Okay, I was just going by the yellow marks.
And we're on this anyways.
Okay,
Okay, so
yeah, and what we sent here, I'm referring right to the binder. So in the flexible development, this was intended to add specific language regarding the front yard setbacks. So right now the text talks about side and rear yards shall be at least 10 feet, except that the board may approve otherwise, or except as otherwise provided in the section. So I was proposing adding language, front yards shall be at least 25 feet unless specifically allowed otherwise by the planning and zoning board.
Yeah, that's all it is, right? So.
Yeah. Okay, and the bed and breakfast, again, this is consistency. Whereas in the text, it talks about 4 to 10 rooms for rent requiring a special permit from the planning and zoning board. And in the table of uses, it had 5 to 10. So this, again, just creating consistency.
Is a question, is bed and breakfast kind of a, even though it's the name of a big company, I mean, is it kind of like an antiquated term that maybe is, I know there's been a lot of talk about, Airbnb type things, but that might be like kind of along the same lines. When you say, okay, well, if someone wants to, I don't think we should say you can't rent your house out on Airbnb, but I don't know if you should be able to rent out 4 to 5 rooms. Say, well, what do they say? Well, I don't serve breakfast, so I'm not a bed and breakfast.
So I think generally from what I've seen in the chatter, in the planning listservs and discussions, and just listening to how cities and towns are responding to Airbnbs, one of the big differences is a bed and breakfast is you have several rooms that you're renting out on a short-term basis, and you generally provide breakfast, some kind of food service. Versus Airbnb, where you're renting out your home and likely are not, in some instances, it may be a section of your home that you're not living in. So you may be on premise as the owner, but in many instances, the owner isn't even on premises.
Okay, well, yeah, whatever, I'm just wondering, you know, if that was what we're looking at here, but yeah, so you're straight Airbnb, this is like straight up bed and breakfast, you know, that accepted definition, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm a little confused, because I see in the principal uses, it shows, you know, it's allowed by right, residential and business. And then, but then it says bed and breakfast, and it says PZB. So are you saying that PZB for 4 or 5?
So currently, the way it reads, Greg, both under principal uses and under accessory uses, it reads bed and breakfast. It refers to section 23539. And then it says ZBA for 5 to 10 rooms for rent.
Right.
And section 23539 says 4 to 10 rooms for special permit. And I think in the body of 23539, it also says the special permit is from the Planning and Zoning Board.
Yeah, so my question is, but then it says, so it's, okay, special permit Planning and Zoning Board, 4 to 10 units. But then I see it has Ys, which means by right, in the first 3 zones.
Up to.
So is that under 4 units by right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and then further down on the Furnace Village District, why, I guess, are we changing it to ZBA? It says Y/ZBA, why?
You know, I was looking, so let me check.
It doesn't make any sense that
because-
zoning ZBA would take that after we're doing all the.
Hold on, let me see what it is in here already.
No, the ZBA used to do, but no, we said PZBF. The ZBA used to do bed and breakfast because it wasn't in the bylaw, but now it is, so we can do it.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be PCB.
That is how it's listed in the table currently, Greg.
No, wait, but I guess it's
I-
in highlighted in yellow. I thought, maybe I misunderstood. I thought anything in yellow was a change.
No, so I should not have highlighted that.
Okay.
I
But-
just selected.
Okay, so if that is how it is now, but maybe, I mean, so we're doing, but see, so it says bed and breakfast for 4 to 10 is by planning board, special permit, but not in the Furnace Village districts. That doesn't, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
I think,
So we need to change that to PZB.
yeah.
So that should be changed.
And do we think, so are we saying that bed and breakfast from 1 to 3 bedrooms are allowed by right?
Yes.
So you need two line items, 7 and 8.
I'm sorry, Amos, you're really kind of, your speech is blurry, for lack of a better term.
Well, I can do about it. You are saying that you should have 2 line items for 2 different number of rooms?
I'm sorry, I
We
didn't
need to
understand.
he's saying, he's questioning if we need to have 2 different line items for 2 different number of rooms. I think we need, I think we need to clarify this sometime. You know, as long as we're revising
I
it,
think 2 line items is the best way to do that.
we should, right?
Like,
Or do we, yeah, I mean, or maybe we should talk about that. I don't know if we've ever done this. I mean, do we want to just do all bed and breakfast under special permit? Is there a reason we'd say, no, 1 to 3, it's not a special permit? I don't, you know, well, why? You know, and we don't have to answer this right now, but it's just something to think about, so. But we should, yeah, it's pretty ambiguous, or not ambiguous, but confusing. We should
That's not a good way to solve that, just make it.
try to simplify it. So everybody put on their bed and breakfast thinking caps for the next 6 days. And then the next one's pretty easy. We're just eliminating, you know, the something that we had eliminated back when we were working with Judy Barrett, but it just made its way back in. There's the minimum lot depth, because it doesn't work on any of the units, or virtually none of the the existing lots in the Furnace Village and Depot districts. And I guess, so just on that, we'd have to, 22. I don't know what, and I won't, see Stephanie under Furnace Village major project, we got it as a footnote for 22. So whatever footnote 22 is, I don't know if we need to, oh, it's on the other ones too. Maybe we can just get rid, oh, we know what it is, that's the one that specifies width to depth, so we could drop.
Right,
Right,
yes, yeah, yep.
And then the in-law apartment, so this is the first I saw of this, I wasn't sure what it was, if you wanna walk us through it.
Okay, this was something Deb brought up, questioning why, the way the language is written right now, it says, any new separate outside entrance serving an in-law apartment shall be located on the side or in the rear of the building. And, you know, Deb's concern, I thought it was valid, is that usually, you know, if you have an in-law apartment and it has an outside entrance, you want to make it as easy as possible for people who are getting on in age to enter into the building. And by requiring, appearing, I mean, this appears to require, it definitely requires, if it's a new separate entrance outside, that it be at the rear or the side, which could make it more difficult for someone to maneuver into the building, especially if they are using a wheelchair.
Well, and my other thought was just that, like, so many of our houses have a main entrance and a mudroom entrance, and like, to be able to utilize that or even create a new one in a similar style seems like it would make a lot of sense, and it still can be subject to the fire department approval and still be secondary in appearance to the main entrance. And so, yeah, I wasn't sure. It was just something I came across when I was reading it, and I was like, well, that's strange. So I just wasn't sure. And like, if you just wanted to say, incorporate an entrance like a mudroom entrance for this in-law, you'd actually have to go before the board, which seemed like kind of a big thing for, I'm not sure why we required it really, so.
Well, that came along because if you think back, I think you were on the board at the time, so many of the first duplexes are people just jamming, I'm sorry, in-laws, the houses all of a sudden were having 3 front doors and it wasn't really work. So we were looking to get sort of that secondary entrance to be accessory. You know, some of them are joint mudrooms and that wouldn't be the case because that's not a separate outside entrance serving just the in-law. If it's a mudroom that serves both the in-law and the existing house, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, on this, we haven't had any complaints. We see an awful lot of in-laws, but, you know, if we want to add something that it can be, you know, it has to be accessory in appearance, that's fine.
Just say that, yeah, it's like subordinated or accessory in appearance.
This was an aesthetic. We didn't want to, this was an aesthetic. We don't, and just because a door isn't, you know, parallel to the front elevation of the house, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be any less accessible. So.
Yeah, I think as long as it's separate and accessory in appearance, that maybe gives people a little bit more flexibility, because it's not, you know, depending on the lot and so forth, it can be difficult to do especially a rear entrance. And yeah, I'm thinking about, like, yes, an older person and their guests going all the way to the back of the house seemed kind of.
Okay, well, we can discuss it. This
Okay,
is
so-
the first I've seen it, so why don't we, let's discuss it more on the 6th or the 7th, I guess.
So are we, are we still on track to discuss any possible mystery/municipal uses for the Depot Center area?
No, that is being tabled for this period.
Okay.
Reason being that church is under agreement and the sale's it's going to be remaining a church.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the original, sort of the impetus of that. And we may still look at, we have the the center school parcel will be coming up. And possibly the readers, but those, I think those are discussions, we'll hold, in this next year, give it some thought, but there's no.
Yep, okay, all right, thank you.
Nothing pressing right now. Excuse me. So that's it on zoning, right, Stephanie? We got everything?
That's it.
All right, meeting minutes.
Just a question, Stephanie. Funeral rates we are not doing this time?
I did not get a chance to get that in a format in time to send to the board. So
Next time,
do we want to put that on the next meeting or for next?
next year. I guess.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I'm sorry, he cut out, I couldn't even hear what he was talking. What was the question?
The soda photo, the
Oh,
photo,
yeah, so.
solar photovoltaic.
When I, Stephanie and I had discussed last week these, and honestly, I wasn't really, just myself personally, I wasn't really I wasn't grasping the idea of what we were trying to accomplish. So I just threw it up there, up to the, if there's something you want to put forth for this period, I think we can still do it by next week. But I must say, I gotta be honest with you, I just didn't catch on to what you were trying to do. So if you want to push this off to the, it's something we could do in the fall, or if you want.
I think the easiest thing that, one thing we could just consider is just adding it to the definition of a structure. So just like a swimming pool, it would be allowed, yet subject to the regular setback and other requirements.
Yeah, I put something together and send it to Stephanie.
Yeah, so
That's kind of what I'd asked last time, I think, so you guys just getting some paperwork going on if you want.
So I did have a chance, I read through what Amos sent, and I did make some edits, I just didn't have a chance to finish them up to send out to the board, so I can do that, it's not in bad shape.
In general, is trying to formalize what is already happening anyways, more or less.
Sure. Well, let's put it in writing and then we can discuss it. I think that's the best way to do it.
Stephanie, is that the same situation with the accessory structures that I sent? I sent some ideas for language change and.
Deb, frankly, I didn't see it.
I think Suzanne sent it prior to our last meeting.
Okay,
Well, if it doesn't work and we are planning things, we can delay that.
Yeah, I think the accessory structure has so many different moving pieces to it.
Your email, just so you know. You're sharing your Outlook with us.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. My only concern would just be that we tabled it from last year. So I feel like we shouldn't probably table things that we've discussed if we do think we should change them, for multiple years in a row, because it clearly isn't a priority then. But especially since Amos is talking about, I think we did talk a little bit about how the solar voltaics may be in conjunction with some language about accessory structures. So yes, if it's too much to get it in this time, I think fine. But I think unless we put it on some agenda for sure, it might turn out to be it gets crammed into next year's zoning change. So it'd be nice to see it discussed and one way or another, like we don't change it or we edit it. So
yeah, well, just to that I would say this: there's certainly nothing that doesn't allow any member of this committee to submit any ideas in writing. And
I did. I did, Greg.
Well, but I didn't see it. So, and I'm just saying.
I don't know why. I think you said.
But we spent, Deb, please. We spent a lot of time on this last year, and we didn't. It's difficult. A lot of it's just illegal, so it's a tricky one. We spent a lot of time on it, and we couldn't figure it out. And then I remember saying, okay, well, let's circle back next year on it. So I would look for someone advocating for it to take the reins and give a little outline and same thing to Amos. I love other people coming up with ideas, but to just throw out an idea with a thing written and submitted, it's hard to discuss in the board. And I think when we have something written, even just a simple form, then it's much easier for us to deliberate on it because we see it and we can contemplate about, privately before we get together, and then we can share our thoughts. So, certainly open to both of these, but, if we could get something before us in a timely fashion, so the board has a few days to review it, then I think we can have, we have a better chance of having productive, deliberations and conversations, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I just don't want you to think, no one here's trying to table anything 2 years in a row, but I did put it on, this is a committee, so I put it on the members proposing to get something out in writing.
With all due respect, Greg, I did do that. I sent it to Suzanne prior to our last meeting, and I thought what you had said was to send it to Suzanne or Stephanie, and then they would forward it to the board. So I don't know if I misheard that or not. And I know Amos did send something to myself and Chris, and I didn't want to comment on it because it hadn't been sent from Suzanne or Stephanie, and I know we can't discuss it.
Oh, hang on, just let me stop you. Hey, guys, super important to remember, members of this committee cannot send items to other members of this committee. Everything has to go through Stephanie or Suzanne.
Right, which is what I did.
No,
So I don't know why it didn't get
I'm not
forwarded.
talking about you. So I'm just saying nobody else can't send things about specifics. That's a violation.
So I'm going to fall on the sword. It's probably, I'm sure Deb sent it to Suzanne, and Suzanne probably brought it to my attention, and it was an oversight on my part not to act on it.
I sent it about 3 weeks ago, or something like that.
So are these things, let's try that again. These two items, can we look at them on the 7th?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, but I mean, I need to see what Deb sent, so I'll regroup with Suzanne tomorrow, and we'll find that email, and I will look at it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, just let me know so we have an idea where, thank you very much.
I apologize, Deb, for that.
No problem. And to be fair, I think that it's because of like the last time, I think it is a lot to it's not a simple fix like some of these other ones that we've done. So I can understand if it may be too complicated for us to arrive at a consensus on it at this late stage at this point. So we can just do what we just take a look and make a decision about how to handle it.
Very good. Okay, did we, no, okay, we know we did that, sorry. Meeting minutes, we did, zoning minutes. Okay, ZBS request for comment. This is the Starbucks signs, variance number 22-2, 33 Robert Drive.
Running out of battery.
Have we assigned have we allowed, suggested to allow the multiple signs on some of the other locations?
We have done it, yeah, we've allowed it a couple times.
Yeah, like there was one out front, right? I forget what it was, but, oh, they wanted a sign, like a sign.
Just recently we had one too.
Yeah. So it looked okay to me, and not like, it's almost like there's like one sign on each side, even though it's this broken apart, right?
Yeah, it's a standalone building in a heavily commercial area.
Kind of like a duplex, if you want to like make those two signs like connected by a little strip of sign, then you could call it one sign, right?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm so happy to have a Starbucks that I can look at my house.
Well, the two signs will definitely add
some,
they'll add some focal point. Right now, it's really kind of a.
Yeah, it's a pretty ugly building.
Yeah.
Even a Starbucks sign will make it look better. So, motion to recommend the proposed signs.
Anderson, second. Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, do you have to make a motion?
Right, have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, Strange eye.
Shane, aye.
Balsaric, aye.
Anderson, aye.
Great, all right. I think that's everything. Stephanie, do you have anything else?
Excuse me, Greg, we did not look at the minutes.
I'm sorry, we didn't look at the minutes.
You did not review the minutes.
Nope.
Okay.
Yep.
Peter, this is your time to
Now we'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Anderson, second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes? Gregory Strange, aye.
DeShane, aye.
Anderson, aye.
That's an aye.
Bell Sarah, aye.
That is unanimous. Stephanie, anything?
No, nope, next meeting.
All right, kids, thanks, for joining us. Long meeting, but we got a lot done, so that was good. And, yeah, next meeting, so our next meeting is a week from tonight.
Yes.
So who wants to bring us home?
Motion to adjourn.
And second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, Strange, aye.
Aye.
That's an aye.
Bell Sarah, aye.
Thank you, kids. Thank you, Easton.
Thank
you.
Good night, everybody.
Stephanie, thank you,
Good
ECAT.
night.
Have a good night.